Hello everybody and welcome to Omnipoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. I'm Jack and today we're taking a look at the Week 2 tournament results of the Brilliant Stars meta. We're starting to see a bit of a metagame form and obviously we're only a few days away from the first IRL regional in 2 years in Brisbane this weekend coming up. So, every week we do these sort of result analysis videos, and we have a few more tournaments to look at. You can see all the tabs I want to chat about today. Hopefully it won't be too long. I'm going to turbo through a lot of it. But first things first, make sure you check out the Potown store for all your PTCGO codes. You can get 5% off your order using code Omnipoke. They have Brilliant Stars, they have all of the old sets as well, ready for PTCG Live, so yeah, make sure you check them out. So yeah, I just want to take a quick look at the Dex tab on Play Limitless. Obviously all of our information is coming from Play Limitless. The Dex tab is sort of a new statistics page that they have that's really good. Basically, I'm looking at the TCG standard format with Brilliant Stars involved, and we can see already how much Mew is being represented right now. Almost 3 times the representation of the next most popular deck, which is Gengar, is insane. It's crazy how many people are playing Mew. Obviously, it didn't get it didn't get too many new cards. It just basically got Ultra Balls and stuff. So it was a fairly cheap deck to be able to improve if you were already playing Mew. So naturally, it's a bit more accessible than Arceus for some people. But even so, you can see how popular it is, and you can also see it boasts a above 50% win rate, which is really, really good. Basically, this is considered a good win rate, even though it's only 50-ish%, just above 50%. This is considered a good win rate in a game in a situation like this. So yeah, that's really, really interesting. Following down for the next couple of decks, just at the moment we're ordered in percentage of players, but in a moment I'm just going to show you something quite interesting to do with the win percentage. We have Gengar second, again, probably looking to counter Mew. It has the best Mew matchup pre-Brilliant Stars. So yeah, looks to be an obvious one to try out. Arceus Duradolon has been very successful in the early couple of weeks, as well as initially boasting a fairly decent Mew matchup. I think it's now dropped to sub 50% Mew, but in the early weeks it was a pretty good one. Calyrex Inteleon, that's basically Ice Rider, and then Rapid Strike Mally rounding off the top 5. So yeah, some pretty interesting things there. Obviously, you can see that Gengar and Rapid Strike Melee actually have pretty low win rates compared to where they are in terms of placements. So yeah, very interesting stuff. The only Arceus build, obviously, is this Duradolon build up at the top. You have sort of Arceus Moltres, the Dark Arceus variant, all the way down in 9th place in terms of meta percentage. But again, boasting a very, very good win rate. So yeah, if we quickly invert this table and look at that win rate, some very, very interesting things start to pop up. First and foremost, basically 3 of the top 5 are all Arceus decks. That's really interesting. That shows that Arceus is definitely a very strong card. Arceus Inteleon is kind of this new age straight Arceus build that I know a couple of people have been playing 2 fairly successful placements, as well as, I've seen Tord streaming it quite a lot lately and stuff. So it's really starting to gain popularity. It's so low just because the share is so low, because it's only in the past 48 hours, realistically, it's really started to gain traction. But you can see it boasts a really good win rate. That's probably going to start to go down when people, again, start to figure out the matchup and test it a bit more. But realistically, going in with a 57% win rate is really, really good. It's going to drop for sure. Realistically, you can't really trust this kind of data when there's only 26 instances of this being played. But I think it will settle within at least the top 10, maybe even the top 7, 6, maybe even 5, to be honest. So I think it isn't a complete outlier, but it is a little bit of an outlier. You can see that Arceus Duradolon then boasts the best win rate in the game in terms of decks with over 100 placing, or 100 plays, 100 people playing them. I don't know what that stat's called, but yeah, you can see that Arceus Duradolon is definitely a really good deck right now. It looks to be really good for dealing with all the fringe decks, getting rid of all of these one prize decks, all of that kind of stuff. You can actually click into these and you can see matchups, and you can see that the Mew win rate is definitely pretty low, but you can then see basically it's kind of hard to tell because of the way it does it, but you can see a lot of these sort of other random decks, the Dark Boxes, the Rapid Strike Mallies, you're boasting very, very good win rates against these. And that, I think, it attributes to its success for sure. Calyrex and Teleon still looks to be really strong. Just the existence of the Choice Belt makes its numbers so much better. With, and I would imagine this is with and without Arceus. I'm not 100% sure. Oh, Rider and Arceus is here. Yeah. It's interesting how they have like broken this down. But yeah, Dark Arceus is number 4, and then Mew is actually number 5. Obviously, these are all decks with great win rates. Realistically, you could probably look at like these 5 as the 5 most winning decks right now. Mind you, even Hooper Moltres, to be honest, you can really see that the meta is honing in around these 4 decks, to be honest. A lot of these are being represented so much more than any other deck. So yeah, some interesting stats there. You can see that Arceus and Mew are basically dominating, which is kind of what we expected, to be honest. But yeah, you can actually see now in the stats that realistically, if you don't count Arceus and Teleon, because it's only just got 26 games played, or 26 instances of it being played, so it's probably slightly skewed at the moment. Arceus Duradolon is actually the most winning deck right now, so that's really interesting. But yeah, on to the actual tournaments, kicking things off with Late Night 29. And as you can see, we're kicking off with a crazy one. We have Duraludon winning the tournament. Not Duraludon, Durant winning the tournament. This was actually huge. This was the night I recorded the last stream. Last video like this. So yeah, that's a really interesting one. Obviously, it's a bit. I think it is a flash in the pan success. We'll go over some of the lists in a second, but I think it is a flash in the pan success, to be honest. It's not done too well since, but yeah, it's interesting. We've got a couple of Mew Genesects. We've got a Arceus, a Dark Arceus. We've got a Victini deck, another Mew Genesect, Duraludon. You can see, and then just a boatload of Mew rounding out top 16. So yeah, a nice variety, to be honest. We've got Suicune, we've got a Single Strike in there. We've even got a Shadow Rider, to be honest. So a nice variety of decks making top 16. We'll take a look at a couple of the lists. This is the first one, the Durant list. Again, I really do feel like this was a flash in the pan success. I don't think it's. I think it's like tier 2. I don't think it's a complete meme, but I do think it struggles with players that know not to burn too many resources. I've played against this deck a couple of times, and there's been situations where, you know, if I get 2 attackers out, that's kind of the game, right? They have the Echoing Horn, Boss, Galamine combo, but if you're conservative with your switch outs, it's not really an issue. So yeah, I've played Durant a couple of times, and even in the games where you feel like you don't take a prize on turn 2 or even 3, and they've hit all 4 of their cursed shovels, it feels like they don't have enough time to win the game just because of the constant pressure of whatever. I don't think there's much you can do to the list, to be honest. I really wanted to see Crushing Hammers. I don't know where the space is, but I really wanted to see Crushing Hammers just like an alternative win condition, because there can be situations where that's the way you win. You actually win just through hammering your opponent enough so that they can't attack anymore or can't retreat anymore. So yeah, I'd like to see Crushings in the list, but I don't know where the space is, to be honest. Obviously, there's a lot you need to cram into the list. I also am really interested to know why they played 4 double turbos instead of 4 twins. You're never really attacking with energy assist, so it doesn't matter. But in the instance that you need to, in the instance that you can attack, surely you would want to play more twins. Just something, food for thought. I don't know whether there is a reason. There could be a reason for sure. Maybe if you see a double turbo early and you don't show off any of these other random cards, you're starting with Mincino or whatever, you can double turbo and pretend you're another deck, whereas if you play twins, they know you're a single prize deck. I don't really know. That seems very niche. But yeah, someone let me know down in the comments. We haven't seen too much of this since. It was super popular the day after, to be honest. It was all over the ladder. And I didn't play a single one then. I've only started playing them at the end of this week, or the end of last week, which is really interesting, because by then the hype kind of died down, right? But yeah, it's an interesting one. I'm not sold personally, but it was really cool to see it do well. And yeah, it's been a while since we've had a deck like this do well, I feel. Especially pure mill, right? So it was pretty cool to see, to be honest. The first Mew list we'll look at of the day. Obviously, I'm not going to spend too much time looking at them all. But this is a super solid list. It's running the 1 Peony, which I've seen a couple of lists do well with here and there. This is basically just hyper consistent though, right? There's 4 crams, no phones. I still love phones, but I am going to try a quad cram build just because it seems like everyone's cutting phones right now. I personally can't work it out because I think it's a very good tool for being defensive, and also just that little bit of extra dig when you only have a couple of Genesects, I think is very important. But cram can just, like, you can cram flip into game, so I obviously get the higher roll potential of cram, and at worst, cram is a -2 from hand, right? So, yeah, I do get it. I'm still a fan of phones, but even so, you know, I can't really argue with the quad cram build. Other than that, super solid. Like, there's nothing really to say about this list. 4 stadiums is standard. I'm also a fan of playing 3 different stadiums, but Rose Tower and Training Court are so head and shoulders far above every other stadium. I can understand just playing the good ones. I feel like they clog your hand a little bit more, but it might be worth it just to actually be playing the good stadiums. And then obviously Peony. Peony is an interesting one. There are a lot of situations now where you do need sort of big blow-up turns with multiple power tablets and stuff. So it can be really interesting to, off the back of just finding your first power tablet, guaranteeing finding the other 2, especially if you're in the early turns where you haven't been able to thin the deck out completely of all the VIP passes and stuff. So yeah, I don't hate it. I'm not super sold. There's a lot of one-off supporters I like. I like Marnie. I like Avery. I like the thought of all of these. So I'm not sold which is my favourite, but I have seen Peony doing quite well recently. Love the 2-choice band. Again, it's a card that you probably get to play if you're not playing the Rotom phones, because Rotom phones kind of free up you a couple of spaces. So you probably get to play the free supporter and the free choice belt, and that's really nice, to be honest. So yeah, can't really fault the list too much. Next up we have sort of an Arceus box list. I think this was the top 4 list. That's basically, yeah, just super boxy, trying to hit all sorts of different weaknesses. You've got the Moltres, you've got the Zapdos, you've got the Zamazenta, you've got the Hooper, you've got the Baby Moltres, you've got the Yveltal in here as well. There's just all sorts going on in this deck. I don't hate it. I can't see it being like super consistent. And also, I'm somewhat adamant one of the best ways to win Mew is just to force them to go through a 1 prize after playing the Arceus, after playing like regular Dark Arceus. I feel like one of the best things you can do is force them to go through a 1 prize with Zigzagoons and Mews and stuff. But to be honest, Yveltal using Cry of Destruction, just getting rid of 3 energy, could be crippling enough for them to actually not really be able to represent much of a threat the following turn anyway. They probably have to deal with the Yveltal as well. If they don't, you're probably getting even more value from it. So that they may be down to like 2 thingy energy, what are they called? 2 psychic energy. And if they're down to their 2 psychic energy, or they don't have much energy left, you realistically can then sweep with Galarian Moltres, or even the Baby Moltres in that instance as well. Yeah, so it's an interesting one. Like I say, if you can get at least 1 turn of Yveltal, it does feel very strong. I might try this out tonight, to be honest, after I recorded this video. Just give this a bit of a mess around, because I think, like, in theory, Yveltal seems like a crazy good card right now. I just can't find a deck I like it in. But maybe this is the one, and you're just foregoing the 1 prize game plan, or forcing the 1 prize game plan in the early turns, but doing it later by using Cry of Destruction. So yeah, I'm definitely going to try this one out. Yeah, other than that, it just looks to be kind of having Arceus tie everything together and make these combos happen. Obviously, there's lots of combo-y cards. You've got the Clara Moltres package. Like I say, you've got the Yveltal Double Turbo. You've got Collapsed Stadiums and Zamazentas and all of this for all of these different matchups. All kind of wrapped in a neat little bow with Starbirth is the idea. So yeah, an interesting one. I'm going to try this out tonight after chatting about it a bit more, because I am interested to see how important or how useful Cry of Destruction is. That's the biggest selling point for me, right? You can't play the 7 prize game plan in the early turns, but maybe you force them to have to play it because you're using Cry of Destruction and absolutely detonating their board in the mid game. So yeah, really interesting one there. Then we've got a Victini list. I think this was the top 8 Victini list. Not the usual Victini we've seen. We've seen a lot of quad Victinis with hammers and Kaboos and all of this kind of stuff. This time it's more of a fire box list. We've got Entei, we've got Moltres, we've got Crobat and Luminion. Basically, just looking to be like a tempo deck, right? You poke with a Moltres, you then clean up with an Entei or a Victini. It seems like an interesting sort of theory behind it. The deck to me, or the fire decks to me, have always just been... The most difficult part has been finding the Magma Basin to be able to consistently... Well, find it in the early turns to be able to consistently be applying pressure. And I don't think the deck helps itself do that very well. You're just basically hoping to draw it. There's no tutor in the deck, which is awkward. Obviously, the Inteleon package is very, very expensive in terms of deck space. But you can definitely just find it. And, you know, playing 4 and double Crobat and, you know, you're going to be drawing a lot of cards. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. Leon Choice Belt makes max victory due to 80, which is obviously a great number into V-Stars. It also pushes Entei's numbers to close to one-shot of the... Well, not even just close, but definitely within one-shot range of some of the sort of 2-10 HP Pokemon, which is good. Moltres, you can play the one prize game plan against Moltres, against Mew, because you can pop double Moltres down. Realistically, you can then just kind of focus on 2 prizes, but I think Victini is going to be pretty important in that matchup. Though, you're playing 4 boss thinking about it, so you can just gust, like, turn after turn, and just kill the Genesets, which is interesting. 4 boss and double rope really does mean you get to move around quite a lot, and double air balloon. Yeah, this is just like a hyper consistent list trying to make use out of Magma Basin. Yeah, the damage cap scares me a little bit because you need Leon Choice Belts to break that damage cap. But yeah, an interesting one. Feels like you're going to struggle with KOing of VMAX. But maybe their win condition was just double Moltres against Mew, force them to take 1 prize, and then you can just boss every turn if you can. Interesting stuff. Duradolon, I'm just showing this off because basically you can see that the 2 Hyperpots have kind of come in. I think Hyperpot was a great mirror tech, and to be honest, if I was playing Duradolon, I would be playing almost this exact 60, I think. I think I'd play, instead of the Tool Scrapper, I think I'd play 3rd Gear. But other than that, I think I'd play exactly the 60, which is interesting. So yeah, really like the 60. I like the inclusion of the double Hyperpot. I still like Collapse, to be honest. I maybe try and find space for a 4th Collapse, but I think 3 Big Charm, double Hyperpot is really good. I think Mustard is actually a lot more solid than people give it credit for. I don't mind 1 Rope. I don't mind switching a switch for a Rope. But yeah, I think the most flexible spot in this list is probably the Scrapper. And then Shadow Rider was the last list I wanted to take a look at from this tournament. I personally still can't find a reason to want to play Shadow Rider too much because it just feels like it gets caught in the crossfire of all this dark stuff. But evidently it did pretty well. Look at the amount of energy you play. It's crazy. You're always going to be doing a lot of damage if you're actually getting into the game, which is important. And again, you can kind of play that awkward game plan where you put Arceus VSTAR down, you've maybe got a Crobat or whatever down, and then you're forcing the 7 prize game plan, right? Because the rest of your board is just Shadow Rider Calyrexes. But yeah, the constant threat of dark type Pokemon around would be pretty scary. Yeah, there's nothing that's like super compels me to want to play this because I don't know that Psychic's not a great type in particular right now. The damage isn't amazing. It's not awful. But you need, 9 or 8 energy on board with a Choice Belt to... 8 Psychic energy on board with a Choice Belt to KO a V-Star. That feels doable, but not, like, amazing. I guess your Trinity Nova gets 3 on the board. You attach Underworld Door, like, at most 3 times, that's 7, so you've got 8. It's interesting. I feel like you're going to be... I still feel like you're going to be on the back foot a lot of the time with this deck. But evidently it did pretty well, so maybe I am wrong. Again, one that I haven't really tested. To be honest, I haven't really tested Shadow Rider since like Chilling Reign, because it very quickly dropped out of favour. Next up we have the Liam Kid Qualifier. It was for a Gold Ultra Ball plus 100 battles. Brilliant Stars packs. Again, you can see a pretty varied top 16 this was. Pretty varied top 16. You've got a Jolteon here and there, you've got another Victini and a Rapid Melee, even an Eternatus, Speaking Ludi. But again, these top 4 decks, or top 6 decks, are all, we're seeing the familiar faces, we're seeing Ice Riders, we're seeing Arceuses, we're seeing Duradons, we're seeing Mews. So you're seeing familiar decks over and over now. Ice Rider was the deck that won. This is sort of a straight build rather than with anything super spicy. Very much harking back to old Ice Rider builds with a heavy Path of the Peak as well, which is interesting. You can see there's only a couple of new cards in here. There's only a couple of Choice Belts and a couple of Ultra Balls. Ultra Ball really helps with these Melanie decks because it's just another out to getting rid of your water energy, which is fueling your Melanie, which is very, very important. So yeah, I do think Ultra Ball is a huge pickup for these Melanie decks. But overall, again, yeah, you're also able to hit those nice numbers, right? You have 250, 280 with a belt, 310 with a Leon, which is ideal. You've got the Raihan to be able to reload quite nicely, along with the Melanie as well, to be able to really push that. You can also play that 7 prize game again by forcing in an Aqua Bullet and setting things up for the mid to late game, I guess, which is important. So yeah, nothing crazy about this list. It's pretty standard. It just looks to try to be a super tempo based list, trying to really just lean into Calyrex's huge HP and just good damage, to be honest. Little bit scared of the random Zamazentas that keep popping up here and there, because I think obviously the Path of the Peak definitely help you, but if people are starting to respect Path a little bit more, which I've seen a couple of lists playing, like random Pumpkaboos here and there, even that Shadow Rider list just then was playing a Pumpkaboo, so there's definitely random Pumpkaboos here and there. If people are starting to do that, or play extra stadiums, that kind of thing, it's a little bit spooky. Path of the Peak gets a little bit weaker. But yeah, it's an interesting one. Again, nothing crazy about the list, to be honest. There's not like anything that stands out. It's just trying to be as consistent as possible, right? And then in the counterpart is the Ice Rider Arceus variant, which looks to be playing this 2-2 barrel. Basically, essentially looking to, start with Trinity Nova and set up the not necessarily 8 prize game or 7 prize game, because they always can bosh with the barrels. But just trying to set up Ice Riders to hopefully realistically tank a hit, like Max Lance for 2 prizes, tank a hit, Max Lance again, is kind of the game plan, which is why there's like less of a focus on Melanie, less of a focus on these Ice Riders. They're more for the late game, which is interesting. Looks like this one's also playing Path of the Peak, which is pretty cool. It looks to be sort of a Starbirth. Super happy with Starbirth. Now I'm going to Path of the Peak, try and lock down the game. And then we've got Industrious Incisors on the barrel to prevent me getting Marnie screwed or anything like that, which is important. I really like the barrel. I still haven't played a deck with the barrel in right now. But I think this is the perfect deck for it, right? You've got lots of discard synergy, naturally, with wanting to get the waters in the bin for Melanie and for that kind of, for basically searching out the V-Star with all the Ultra Balls and stuff. So you've naturally got a lot of discard, and you're then able to draw back up with the barrel. Got the 1 Avery in here. I can't think it's for anything in particular other than just trying to slow down certain decks. I'm pretty sure your single strike matchup looks to be not ideal, I would imagine, considering you're not able to take out a single strike VMAX, so they can basically just tear through 4 prizes with you. So trying to limit their bench can be helpful here and there. Similarly with Mew. For me personally, I think even though Avery obviously gets rid of 1 extra Pokemon, I think if you're wanting to do that kind of play, Collapse Stadium seems to be better, just because it's a persistent effect, and it's not your supporter for the turn. It means you can still boss, you can still research, that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of Avery right now. I think it's a bit too slow. I think the Stadium is just slightly better. But yeah, again, a pretty interesting list, trying to really crumb people with the Path of the Peak, and then just the natural tankiness of Ice Rider Calyrex still seems to be pretty cool. The Yosefi week 7, playing for a gold Arceus VSTAR this week. It was actually won by Sylveon Arceus. A couple of Duradolons in the top 8. I think this is the lowest placing, or the tournament that had the lowest placing Mew this week, to be honest, and that's a top 8, which is quite funny. You can see there's still a Gengar, there's still a Durant, there's still bits and bobs here and there. Mad Party there, a couple of Hooper Moltres decks, Torterra down there. But yeah, again, a very varied, like as you go down the top cut, you can see a very varied sort of array of decks, but we really are seeing some familiar faces, albeit with Sylveon and Single Strike in this one. Taking a look at the Sylveon list, playing the very spicy Crobat VMAX. I couldn't tell you why, other than, I guess, naturally you're playing Crobats anyway, so rather than playing the whole, like, Galarian Moltres combo, you're just playing something that can evolve from your Crobat, and then you can just Trinity Nova to your Crobat instead of, like I say, trying to find space for this Moltres package. So I guess it's just being used as like a big tanky version of Moltres, right? Realistically, 300 isn't the hardest to hit. 210 is their like natural. 210 is Mew's natural hitting point. So 310 is harder to hit than 300 because it's just 3 powers away. So the HP scares me a little bit. I would feel a lot more confident if it was a 310 HP Pokemon, because then you could realistically see this taking like 4 prizes. But I think realistically this probably does only get 1 attack in and then move back. So maybe it was for something else. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, I'm still not the biggest fan of Sylveon. I always think it's struggled with consistency. But here and there, it's done very well in the past. You can see that there's obviously a lot of very strong cards in here. You have Arceus, you have Rapid Strike Urshian. Basically, no one's playing Manaphy right now. A lot of the one-price decks have cut it, so you're able to Grinch matchups there, which is great. You've got Sylveon just to be able to naturally just be a decent 3 prize, well 2 prize with a ribbon badge, but 3 prize beat stick after the first Arceus has gone down. And also is a psychic type, so it's naturally punishing some of the fighting types out there right now. So again, it's one of these decks that all tries to complement each other's weaknesses and hit exactly what you want. Again, also playing the Path of the Peak. It really feels like a lot of decks are trying to weave in Path of the Peak right now, which is definitely interesting. Battle VIP Pass as well. I've just spotted those. I guess that helps fill your board in the early turns to make sure you've got 1 attackers to be setting up with Trinity Nova. 2, I guess you can get double Roam Raid down in kind of the Mew matchups where forcing them to not be able to rope or whatever is plausible. Seems quite hard though. But yeah, no search for the VIP pass outside of Crobat on turn 1 is a bit awkward. But, this is only playing Karina's Focus, Marnie and Melanie as well. So there's no like super hard dig for these VIP passes. So it does feel like they would become a bit dead in the late game, especially when in the late game one of your best draw supporters is Karina's Focus. You don't want to do Karina's Focus for like 3 for the best draw supporter you can do, and then still see a VIP pass. So they're a little bit weird, but we do have Quick Balls and Ultra Balls to be able to get rid of them anyway. So it's not the end of the world. But yeah, Sylveon still standing strong. Gnarly Knights N2 saw the first win of the week for Mew, and you'll very quickly see that this was basically the rest of the week. You can see a couple of interesting points to note here. You've got the Decidueye Inteleon popping its head up very briefly. I don't think it'll be around for long, personally. But again, you can really see this tournament was heavily dominated by a lot of these top decks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Mew in the top 16. 3 Duradolon. So over 50% of the top 16 was dominated by 2 decks. And then it was just basically one and done instances of these other decks. So yeah, like I say, we really are honing in on this kind of metagame that we're starting to see. You can see the 1 Pump Kaboom, the 3 Meloetta in here at the cost of a 1/1 line of Mew VMAX. I think 4/3 Mew is very important, but I can understand wanting to cut them a little bit. I think Meloetta is basically like not more important than Mew turn 1, but just as important than Mew turn 1 for a lot of in a lot of instances. But it does mean you have space for 4 Karam, 4 Rotom Phone, the extra Fog Crystal, that kind of thing. Only playing the 1 Rope does scare me a little bit. I think Rope is busted right now. I think it's basically a win condition against some decks on turn 1. So I definitely find space for a second Rope. Admittedly, it probably would be at the space of one of these Crams or Phones. And only 3 Rose Tower also really worries me, because you will end up drawing the same stadium that you have right now. I think it's important to have multiple different stadiums, because you don't want to draw into the same one over and over again, and you don't want to then have to discard them with Quick Ball and Ultra Ball, because you need them to be able to bounce path and stuff, right? So I think it is important to play a stadium split. But obviously, Training Court is a lot worse when you're only playing one Psychic Energy. This is playing the double turbo energy, which I do like, to be honest. I think double turbo is very strong. It's just a shame that it's at the cost of a Psychic Energy in this build, because I think this list definitely somewhat disrespects Duradolon. I think Duradolon is always going to be a hard matchup, especially given that you're only playing one rope as well, because it feels like if you're playing this kind of build, you have to really lean into trying to rope them in the early turns to stop them ever getting a Duradolon out. And if they ever get a Duradolon VMAX out, you're basically, theoretically, in a very bad spot, right? Because the most you can do, or the best attack you can do, is Max Miracle. Obviously, you have damage mods, but realistically, it's not great. So yeah, not the biggest fan of this list personally. I can see some of the decisions that they've made, but I think the stadium count is something that I would definitely want to change, as well as just trying to find space for another rope in here. The GG Tour Chill TCG Showdown, again, this really was dominated by basically the same decks over and over. Lots of Mew, lots of Arceus, with a cheeky Gengar topped in, or pop in here as well. The list I'm actually going to show from this one is Catering's list. It was, I think, top 4. This is basically one of the first instances of this. That's some... Joe's streaming right now, so that's some someone dropping some bits for Joe. Anyway, this was one of the first instances of the sort of straight Arceus build doing well. Arceus and Teleon, like the Healy build with Sharon's Care and Dunsparce and that kind of thing, and just basically saying Arceus is doing 210 every turn, or 180 every turn, I guess, in this build, because you're not playing the belts. You're doing 180 every turn, but you're able to heal up, you're able to get multiple attackers up. 280 HP is huge, and with a couple of big charms and some Path of Peaks, realistically, you're going to struggle to actually get through that turn after turn. If you ever don't, I can Sharon, pick one up, pop the Arceus back down, and just Trinity Nova back to it. So yeah, just basically looking to be like a tanking deck. I haven't tried this deck yet. I know Joe has played it on the channel, and I think he thought it was quite cool, to be honest. But I personally haven't tried it out yet. This is another one I definitely want to try, because it is definitely gaining popularity. I think it will settle probably sort of top 7 or 8 in the format. I think it actually does have a lot of merit going for it, but I still think the tempo of some of these counter decks will be a bit stronger than it. I think Double Sharon's Care still seems pretty strong, but without having played the deck prior to today's video and only discussing a little bit with Joe about it, I couldn't say what the cut is, so I wouldn't want to lead you down the wrong path with cutting an incorrect card, but I would love to see a second Sharon's Care just to really lead into that tanky, the tanky aspect of the deck. So yeah, a couple more tournaments. There's only like two or three more tournaments. We have the CDO Stats, which was a huge tournament. I think this was the biggest of the week. And once again, you can see dominated by Mew, a couple of Arceus here and there. You've got a Jolteon in there as well. But again, pretty much absolutely dominated by Mew. This is the winning list. Again, just kind of showing off that this Peony build is starting to gain popularity. Other than that, I think it's playing the one gear as well. But it's a pretty standard list. Crams, no phones, playing the one gear, playing 3 different stadiums, which, as I mentioned, I really, really like. But yeah, pretty standard build, just kind of showing that it's gaining popularity. There was also this Arceus build. This is kind of similar to that sort of box style build where you're trying to hit lots of different... Ooh, there was a sub. There was a sub for Joe as well. Lots of different types. Obviously, grass hitting the Gengars. You've got the Dark. For the Mews, you've got the Fightings for the other Arceus builds. And again, wrapped all in a nice neat bow with Arceus kind of trying to make it all happen. Quad Catcher, I've just noticed as well, is pretty interesting. And Cheryl's. Trying to really make these Arceus nice and tanky. Very interesting list. I think I prefer focusing a little bit more on the Dark package than trying to fit the Shaman package in, personally. I think Shaman obviously is great against Gengar, but other than that, I think it's not super strong. Wait, Gengar has fighting weakness, doesn't it? Yeah, Umbreon is the one I'm thinking of. I knew one of them had. Grass weakness. Yeah, I don't think the Shaman package is all that strong right now. But yeah, I think I'd rather focus on a heavier Dark package and try and counter Mew, because I don't think there's like enough. Mind you, Revenge Blast does do great damage, to be honest. So just being able to, like, Revenge Blast, don't let it go understated. Its damage is very strong. 120 plus 40 is pretty good late game. Realistically, that can definitely one-shot things like Arceus VSTAR and stuff. So yeah, it's not. I guess it's not just for the grass weakness, but in general, I think the deck naturally does struggle with a damage cap, or these Dark Arceus decks do naturally struggle with a damage cap. So I can see why the Shaman is being included, because it does get over that, which is really important. But yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of the Shamans personally. I know a friend of mine has really tried to make Shaman work recently, though, so there definitely could be something there. I'm not personally the strong. I don't think it's personally the strongest way to play Arceus, but yeah, interesting stuff. We have the Dominican Blound, which was also won by a Mew and a couple of other Arceus variants, again making top 8. You can really see that we're just honing around these 3 or 4 decks right now. No crazy, no like massive changes to the list that I noticed. I will just double check that this is the list I think it is. Yeah, this is the Catcher build. So a Catcher build did end up winning this tournament, basically just looking to try and win the mirror with catchers rather than doing it based on how the turn 1 goes, trying to leverage some percentage points with catchers instead. Unfortunately, it is one of the best mirror techs. I hate to say it, but it is one of the best mirror techs. But that's just the way it is, I guess. I don't like it too much, but it may end up being the best way to play Mew if you really do want to respect a mirror and think that there's not too much skill between the mirror, so you're going to have to leverage some extra flips, some extra luck here and there. Catchers seem to be the way to go. And then finally, the Gazer Beam Tourney of Dreams 4 was also won by Mew, but I just wanted to point out that Zoro Box did end up making, I think it was top 8? Yeah, top 8. All Out Blitzel was repping the Zoro Box, playing double Wormadam, playing the Weezing as well, which is interesting. Something that we definitely talked about on stream. And yeah, like I say, this is a deck that we've chatted about a little bit. Battle VIP Pass is an interesting one. I don't think... I can't remember whether it was in our initial list. I need to go back and look at our old list, to be honest. But yeah, I just wanted to point out that Zoro Box did manage to make a top 8 placement. It's one of these decks which is very meta dependent. If you're honing in on the right matchups, it's actually a pretty interesting... It's going to be a pretty interesting day for you, because it does feel like some of the matchups for the deck out there are incredibly strong, but it really struggles against some of the other 1 prizes, to be honest. So yeah, that's the kind of awkward side of it. You basically just want to see Arceus and Mew builds, which, to be honest, looking at these stats right here, it's not that unlikely. So maybe Zoro Box can do well. It's worth keeping in the back of the mind. But yeah, obviously Mew is still dominating. Arceus is not in a close second place, but there's like 4 or 5 different Arceus decks that are all viable, right? So across, like, if you combined all of them, it's definitely in a close second place. In fact, you can even do that on here. If you combine related deck variants into one type, you can see that it's starting to get there. There's a lot less disparity. Obviously, this lumps a load of different variants in. This lumps Duradolon, Ice Rider, all of the different variants in. So, yeah, it's a little bit it skews the data a little bit, but maybe worth keeping in mind. But yeah, other than that, thank you very much for watching. I have been Jack from Omnipoke, and I look forward to seeing you guys in a video soon. Cheers, everyone.